So, hello everyone, welcome to today's session. So, before we start, let me just give a brief introduction to those who are new here. So, Zoho PageSense is one of Zoho's conversion optimization and experimentation platform, which is designed to help teams understand how visitors behave, test ideas faster, and scale what works without juggling a dozen of multiple tools. So at PageSense, we are really big believers of that experimentation isn't just a process; it's actually a culture, and that ties in perfectly with today's topic, that is scaling experimentation and building that culture within the organization. To guide us through it, we have Vignesh Lokanathan with us, who has been leading some truly inspiring work in this space. So Vignesh would like to be introduced as a father, husband, and a son. And in between these roles, he currently works as an experimentation lead at the BBC. So he started his career in business and then he slowly transitioned to analytics over a decade ago. And he was working with multiple agencies, supporting global clients across industries. And in 2016, he stumbled into the world of experimentation purely by accident. And he has never looked back ever since. So what began as helping teams run individual tests has since evolved into a passion, to build a full-scale experimentation programs. So over the last three organizations that he has worked with, he has been instrumental in shaping the cultures of experimentation and setting up programs that empower teams to test, learn, and grow. Without any further delay, I would just I'll hand over the session to him to take us into the world of scaling experimentation.
Thanks, Abdi. Share my screen. Let me know once my screen is up on yours. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Abdi. That was a fantastic introduction. Hello and welcome to everyone. So excited to meet all of you today, and thanks to Zoho as well for creating this this platform for me to be meeting with you all today. So before we start into the actual presentation, I've got a simple question. You can put it in your chat box as well. Chat box. What do you think this thing that's shown up, which is the green bit that's wiggling, and what do you think that is? If you have seen it before, just put in what you think that is. And moving on to the actual presentation. So, like Aarti mentioned, today we're going to be chatting about my point of view about how to scale experiments with an organization, what I think about it, how to go about it. And that's the whole conversation we're going to be having today. And it's my usual style to kind of have things that I do in my professional life related, or kind of look at panels that I have of experiences that I've had in my personal life as well. So for today, I'm going to be reflecting. I have actually reflected on one of my instances in my personal life, and then try and relate it to the scaling experimentation in general. But I'm also going to be sharing some of the parallels that I actually see between these two. So it was year 1991, the year that there's a lot of important events that happened. Gulf War, World Wide Web started, and Cold War was just about getting wrapped up. And my mother had the mission, a very important mission, to get me started on balanced diet, which basically was moving away from just eating meat to eating something that's more balanced, which also includes vegetables and other nutritious food items. So she introduced that, said, look, Vignesh, that's something interesting for you to start trying from today onwards. And like any good child, I started pushing back and coming up with some different reasons. But regardless of whatever reason that I came up with, my mom always had something to counteract it. And then eventually I had no choice than to start eating it. I was quite happy eating, as you can see from my face. And over a period of time, I became a reluctant eater. Yeah, you can definitely find peas and a lot of vegetables on the floor. Not my fault. Gravity is to blame. So a few months passed, and then, like they say, good things happen to good people. And for me, good vegetables came into my life. So there's more vegetables that my mom started to introduce, and that's when we're going to be introducing okra, which is one of um, the worst vegetables that I've actually eaten in my life, but also my favorite at this point in time. Interestingly, it's also called as lady's finger in some parts of the world, um, like other cultures and people call it different words. So my mom changed her tactics because I started pushing even a lot more because of new vegetables. So she tried to sell those by saying good things about it, saying I'll become a lot more stronger, become faster. For example, eating okras would actually help with my brain development, and that would eventually help with me doing better in math. Of everything that she spoke to me, the only thing that stuck to my mind was just eating okras equals to really good grades in math. And as a result, I started eating okras every single day, leading up to my exam, math exam. And then, of course, on the day of the exam itself, I used to eat lots of okras. I walked into the exam hall so confidently. Why would I not? When I have okra to support me with all of my math questions. So I gave my exams and was just super eagerly awaiting it. A week later, I got my results, and it was just the best marks that I've ever got. I was so confused. I couldn't believe that's even happened despite eating all of that okra. I was, in a sense, betrayed as well. So I started questioning the cause and effect and started questioning my mom why it did not work. And that's when my mom started to explain that just eating okras doesn't alone do not help with these. I'll also have to study well to get better scores. But then she continued going on to explain further in terms of why we have to eat healthy and like what sort of effects it has on your health, and how each one of those contribute in a different way. But at the end of the day, if you want to do something better, you have to put in the effort and time to practice and do those continuously so that you can become better over a period of time. That was my moment of wisdom. So I started slowly getting the hang of it. And 3 decades later, I'm still eating vegetables, not because I've got exams to crack or not just expecting something magical to happen in my life, but because I fully understand the why of why I'm doing what I'm doing, which is eating healthy to lead a healthy lifestyle. And that's where the story ends. But like mentioned, there are a lot of parallels between the story that I just shared with you and the experimentation world that I live and work in. For a starter, getting me to start eating vegetables is almost the same as getting teams to start experimenting. And then stage 2 is about getting them to continue despite the many complaints and challenges that people normally say that they have, to continue them to experiment. And the last one is about scaling, which is about making experimentation as a habit, just like how making me eating vegetables and other healthy ingredients as a habit. And that's exactly the point that we're going to be diving further, which is about how do we actually make things a habit for people. So I have a question for you as well. What does scaling experimentation mean to you? It actually means a lot of different things. In fact, I've had so many different definitions of those in the past. It's constantly changed as I've started to work more and more with different companies and been exposed to different experiences as well. So quite interested to see if you've got any of those to kind of share with the rest of those attendees. But let's start with the question. So what is it about running a lot of experiments, or is it about becoming one of those Amazon or Booking.com like companies? Is it about like investing heavily in tools, having the most sophisticated tools, or getting everyone in your organization to run at least one experiment? The way that I look at experimentation is it's about building a culture where you try and learn almost every single day as part of the everyday work that you do. So that to me is giving experimentation. It's not about the numbers, it's about the culture that you have. How does it actually look like? A company that's adopted that sort of a culture, you would actually find that experiments are a natural part of the way they do the work. It's not necessarily being forced. And then you can actually find a lot of learnings that are visible. You don't necessarily have to search for it. You find teams who are celebrating success together because it's usually a collaborative process. Not one team can actually run experiments on their own. And then the last most important one is evidences are valued more than opinions themselves. But if you'd ask, how would you actually go about building something like that? The way that I see is there are 4 critical pillars for that. As an experimenter, I believe it's my responsibility to be able to erect those pillars so that I can build a culture that never stops optimizing. The first of it is mindset. So what is mindset? Mindset is how people think. But our role when it comes to experimentation is we have to change the way that people think about experimentation. So that's not necessarily an easy task, right? Because a lot of times what we end up doing is about change management. But when I talk about change in mindset, I'm talking about 2 very important particular ones. The first of it is valuing curiosity, a place, a mindset where curiosity is celebrated and is encouraged more than certainty. It's as simple as saying, hey, this particular new feature will work. This is not going to work. It's not either one of those. It's about phrasing them slightly differently because of a thinking. Something like, hey, I'm interested to see how this is going to perform, how it's going to improve user behavior or change user behavior. So that's the sort of mindset we need to adopt. The second of the mindset that I would highly want to be changing, probably the most important, difficult one as well, is to look at losses and wins almost in the same way, because regardless of what happens, we are at the end of the day learning something. So that needs to be the primary objective. So that is something very difficult, but it needs to be addressed and changed. I'll now move on to the next pillar, which is called organizational engagement. This is the place where we go and try and engage with different groups within the organization. So when I say groups, I'd usually try to split people, or in this case, groups into two very critical groups. The first group that I see are the leaders, because of the many organizations that I've worked with, there are a lot of organizations that have actually done experimentation as part of a small team who eventually become very successful. But if we never had leadership endorsement or support, that particular program doesn't go too far. Experimentation always remains as an optional thing for those sort of organizations. It's also called as a top-down approach when you have support from leadership. Leaders are actually expecting you to run a lot more experiments. So there's a lot of drive coming from the top. With the leaders, there are 2 very important things that are actually asked for. First one is to provide psychological safety. So it's an environment where people feel safe to take risks, share ideas, ask questions, and then also admit mistakes, right? It's about failing fast in this case. So leaders need to be able to express these in the communication as much as possible. And then the other one is obviously investment. Investment not just in terms of tools and technology, but also in terms of training people, getting the right sort of people into the organization. That is going to be extremely important to ensure that we scale experiments. The next very important group here are the teams themselves. So these are the teams that work on the ground to ensure experimentation is actually being applied and operationally possible. So if leaders set the tone, then the teams are the ones that carry the rhythm for them. This sort of approach is called as a bottom-up approach, where things actually happen a lot in the bottom, which is exactly where things have to get activated. With the teams, there are two things again. The first one is it's about owning the why. They find purpose in terms of why they're doing certain things, especially when it comes to experimentation. Why do they have to adopt that sort of a working methodology? It's going to be very, very important. It's about them understanding the value they get out of it. So that means they would actually own and understand and continue to do those things. The second most important thing is about embedding the workflow, which is about embedding experimentation within the existing workflows. Often people complain, or teams complain, that experimentation is another thing they have to do. But more often than not, if you try and inculcate experimentation as part of the workflows as much as possible, it becomes a lot more easier for them to adopt and continue experimenting. So just like two sides of a coin, it's extremely important that we have both top-down and bottom-up approaches working cohesively at the same time to help us sustain the culture of experimentation. With that, I'll move on to the third pillar, which are enablers. So these are practical support systems that actually helps team experiment better with a lot of confidence. The first of it is, for us as experimenters, defining roles that would help everyone understand what they do, when they do it. This actually helps to reduce the confusion and makes things a lot more collaborative. For example, you can have people, product owners could actually own the experimentation success or objective or goal, whereas the analyst who was supporting that could actually own the measurement framework. So if they work together, then and also understand what exact roles they have in terms of making their experimentation a success, it becomes a lot more easier. The next one is about having light touch governance. I've specifically mentioned light touch governance because there's a lot of times where we want to be applying the best practice possible in the organization, but just understand that it's not always possible for every team to adopt the best practices possible. And more importantly, for us to understand that teams and businesses are not necessarily in the business of running experiments, but they are out there to kind of sell services or products of different nature. But experimentation is just a way of doing things. So make sure that you have guidance and guardrails to provide experimentation support, but at the same time, ensure that they're not necessarily excessive, so difficult for teams to follow that they actually stop doing it. And the last of it, when it comes to enablers, are us trying to actively create practices that creates a space for reflection, knowledge sharing, and continuous improvement. So it could be about creating show and tells, newsletters, demo days, and results clinic. It could be just so many different things as well. The primary objective is about sharing things, not just in terms of sharing success from someone else, but it's also about encouraging others in terms of what they could possibly do in the future as well. And with that done, I'll move on to the final pillar, which is the most important of all, perhaps one that's closest to my heart, because this is the one pillar that is truly within us, within our control. Every other pillar before this, you would have actually noticed that we need to have a lot of support from others in the organization to be able to do those. But when it comes to empathy, it's about us being a lot more empathetic. And by empathetic, I mean it's about us being able to be a lot more understanding about the rest of the organization and the team. So yes, a lot of people talk about empathy, but our users or customers. So yes, we do have to understand our customers really well for us to be serving them well. And that's exactly how any good business would perform. But the empathy that I want to be speaking to you is about empathy with your coworkers. And it's about trying and understanding their requirements and needs and challenges the same way we would try and do with our customers as well. So just imagine or basically understand that the customers and our co-workers are almost exactly the same. One is an external customer, the other one is an internal customer. To understand our co-workers better, I use a framework called HUSH, where HEAD stands for hearing to the challenges, which is about understanding or listening to what sort of problems or challenges they have in terms of adopting experimentation, or in general, just about going about doing their own work on a regular basis. The second one is which stands for understanding their work. And this is another crucial piece of information that will be required. If we were to embed experimentation as part of the existing workflow, we have to understand what they do and how they do it. And this is about understanding their work. Which is staying patient. We have to, again, be a lot more understanding that these teams are trying to change something that's inherently being followed. So change at any point in time in a life or anywhere is always a difficult challenge for to kind of change, to kind of act on. So we have to be a lot more patient and give them a little bit more room and time for them to make changes as well. And the last one is to be a lot more appreciative of the changes that they actually adopt and do. So that's what HUSH stands for. So the result of applying the framework, but regardless of framework or any other framework that you use, it doesn't matter. The objective is to be able to understand our co-workers better, so that we can eventually try and empower them in the ways of working and the things that they want to be achieving. And also in terms of providing the right kind of autonomy, so that we don't necessarily have to be supporting them on an ongoing basis, and also have the necessary support in place for them to continue and scale experiment as they go along. So the simplest way that I would actually say, ask you to think about empathy is, understand that we are all like bees of the same hive. So we're all part of the same organization, trying to work towards a larger objective. I know like we probably might have slightly different objectives, internal objectives, but as a larger objective, it's all the same, which is about building the organization. So everybody is out there to try and do something better for the organization. So if we are a lot more understanding of that fact, I think things become a lot more easier. The last point that I'd like to make is a thing that I just only recently learned last few years' time, that empathy is actually a skill that you can try and learn and adopt over a period of time. So yeah, just try practicing empathy, and you'll definitely start to see a lot more changes in results. I know like we've probably chatted about a few different items, the story and the different pillars, but I'd like to kind of have things summed up. Overall, I would say like scaling experimentation is about building a culture where learning is part of every day. So it's as simple as that when you put in a definition. But you know, it's by no means an easy task to achieve. And there's loads and loads of tactics and patience and perseverance that's actually involved as part of us being able to change it. Think about changing a person's way of thinking is change in mindset. We are trying to change an entire organization, which is made of so many different individuals. So there are hundreds, or possibly even thousands of mindsets to be changed. So it's a Herculean task. So it usually starts with making one small change, like with everything else in this world. So think about it. Don't get fazed by looking at the scale of change that you have to make. Start small, and you can definitely make changes as you go along. And then finally, I'd like to go back to the story that I started with. So regards to my mom changing my eating habits, trying to get me to eat healthy and eat more vegetables and balanced diet. She didn't necessarily try and force me to eat them. She got me to understand the value of it. She made it meaningful, and I understood the why behind it. The same goes for scaling experimentation as well. And so we have to make people own the why after having understood the value of why they're doing it, and only then they will be able to sustain the how. So that's my approach and point of view when it comes to scaling experimentation within an organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vignesh, for such an insightful presentation. And I think you'll be the only one who can actually link okras, like ladies' fingers to experimentation. Always a big fan of your storytelling. So, folks, we are open to questions for the next 15 minutes. Please feel free to post your queries in the Q&A section, or you can always use the QR scanner. You can reach out to Vignesh on LinkedIn if we have something more to ask. We have one question for you. How do you see AI influencing the future of experimentation?
It's quite a broad question. There's just so many different applications of AI all around. AI, I believe, it's just like every other tool that you have already available, but obviously it's a different sort of a tool. Just like how you would apply AI in your regular places of work, right? So being it like just writing email or like coming up with a project proposal, or just simply about like asking questions. Like I do this all the time along with my son, asking just random questions about topics that I've never even heard about. So just like all of this in terms of application, we'll have to try and understand like where exactly we're going to be using and how it's going to be done. I know like there are a lot of solutions that are out there which says, hey, could we use AI to just like come up with ideas on its own, get it to change experiences on its own, and then help us analyze results on its own. I am not necessarily in the camp that kind of believes in that at this point in time, and I'm not necessarily who's on that side as well, who wants to see something like that happen. But I would definitely like to use it as a tool which I would be able to control wherever possible, to kind of augment the work that I'm doing, make things better for the user. So that's my primary goal that I go with regards to anything that I do, be it experimentation or just general change. So I would try and use AI in those sort of wherever I get opportunities to kind of do those in a better way. But yeah, there's just so much happening out there. I'm not necessarily fully skeptical about this. It's not necessarily something super bought into.
Oh, we have another question, Vignesh. What experiment or failure taught you the most about organizational maturity? This is quite interesting.
Failure, to be very honest, I haven't necessarily had what I would define as the proper success so far. It's always a work in the making. So with any organization that I've worked with, it's a very, very long-term kind of initiative and project that companies have to continuously take. And we have to understand that companies evolve because of internal changes, external changes that's happening, and therefore your plans in terms of getting teams adopt to certain changes is always being challenged. So I wouldn't necessarily call those as failures. I would just look at those as learnings, because every time when I work with every organization, there are lots and lots of changes that happens over a short period of time, which you haven't necessarily anticipated when you plan for certain things to be rolled out in the next few months' time. So it's about constantly being open, and that's why the concept of agile is really helpful, because experimentation in general is very closely linked to the concept of agile as well. It's about making changes as you go along, that you feel adapt. So it's only learning. It's not wins, nor losses for me.
Another question for you, Vignesh. We are currently working with an experimentation project team with colleagues across different teams. Everyone is involved and they are inspired by the outcome. But how can we move them to do the actual work of starting experiments themselves? They want to do it, but mostly prioritize other work because there's no urgency to do something that they didn't do in the past.
Yeah, so this is a very common challenge that we have, right? This basically comes from the the belief that experimentation is a thing to be done. If you just make things simpler for people, right, whom you're working along with, to explain that experimentation is what they are already doing, they only have to do it slightly better. And this is how I usually go and phrase to anybody who is a bit hesitant to start or hesitant to continue experimenting as well. So let me explain what I meant by that, which is, if you think about the process of an experiment itself, right, which is about changing something. So we do experiments on a daily basis every single day. But we don't necessarily always have a track to measure how good or bad it was. Maybe we do, but not necessarily adopting the best scientific methods possible. But also in terms of the rationale on why we change or make those changes. So these are the two ends that are usually lacking in our daily lives when we try and do or make changes in our life. It's the same when it comes to organization as well. Teams do a lot of changes on a daily basis because that's exactly what almost everyone's role is. For some teams, obviously, they do what they've done yesterday, probably continue to do the same thing. But a lot of times when it comes to product teams and marketing teams, they're always constantly changing things, trying new things. So that is experiment. If you try and portray that as an experiment, but say only if this could be slightly better, then you had really good rationale in terms of why you did this in the first place, but also have it validated after you've done this change. That would actually make you look a lot better and also get you on a track where you start learning a lot more. So this is the place where you're shifting the place where experimentation is seen as a thing to be done rather than as a way to do things. So it's a significant shift, but we have to try and somehow slowly show value. The easiest way that I have found that's worked is to kind of say what you're doing is already experiment, and you can try and make it slightly better by working together.
Thank you, Vignesh. I hope that answered your query, Nicholas. Anyone else? We have another one. I think that's about it then. Thank you once again, Vignesh. Thank you so much for all your time and effort. Thank you for sharing your insights. And so yes, we'll be back with another CRO Expert series next month. So see you all soon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vignesh, once again. Thank you.
Cheers all. Bye.
Bye.